Welcome to NovoEDTalks, a podcast for authentic, honest conversations about talent development and the people shaping it. On this show, we sit down with leaders across learning and development, mentorship, leadership development, HR, and people strategy to talk about what's really working, what's changing, and what they're learning along the way. These aren't surface-level interviews. They're candid conversations about building skills, developing leaders, supporting managers, and creating experiences that actually move organizations forward. Before we jump in, a quick word about NovoED. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoED is a people-centric talent development platform built for enterprises and training providers. Business transformation starts with people, and people perform better on NovoED. In today's fast-changing landscape, upskilling requires a new approach. NovoED makes it easy to move beyond the talent development status quo by combing social, collaborative, cohort-based learning with real-world application. The result is future-ready talent built on a platform designed to turn learning into measurable impact. Now, let's meet our guests for today's NovoEDTalks episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NovoEDTalks podcast, a space for talent development trailblazers to get real. My name is Melissa Fisk. I'm the producer of the NovoEDTalks podcast, and today I'm joined by Sara Cavallucci, who is the Director of Training, Development, and Customer Service at GS1. Sara is a senior leader with over 20 years of international experience in learning, capability development, and customer service. As a director at GS1, a global standards organization, she leads global training strategies across a federated network, building learning cultures that enable people to grow their knowledge and skills. She is also a certified fitness trainer, reflecting her belief that training is a powerful driver of growth, adaptability, and well-being. Sara, I love that. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us on the NovoEDTalks podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. So I am delighted to be part of this conversation, Melissa.
That's great. Well, Sara, why don't you start by just introducing yourself a little bit more, your role and the scope of, learning or development that you're responsible for.
Sure. So I lead global training, development, and customer service at GS1. GS1 is best known for the barcode. You know, the code you see on products every time you buy something, an item in a shop or online. But we do more than that. So we develop standards and services that create a common language of business worldwide and bring industry, governments, regulators, academia, associations together to move business forward. And just think about how many times a barcode is scanned every day. So this gives you a sense of scale of our standards and how they support the companies around the world. What makes GS1 unique is really our structure. We are neutral, we are a non-for-profit organization, and we operate through a federated model of 120 member organizations across the world, supported by a global office where I work. And here, my role and my scope covers how we build and improve skills and capabilities across this federation at global office level, but also across the 120 member organizations. So the GS1 staff can engage with the industry with confidence to have industry applying GS1 standard and services that also navigate this constant change in business. And the specificity of my role, what makes my role interesting, is that training is usually not mandated in our organization. It succeeds only when it builds this engagement and trust with the industries we serve.
Yeah, absolutely. What's incredible is to really think about how many times a day a barcode is probably scanned. That just kind of blew my mind. But that speaks volumes to just how many different industries you touch and how you're probably working with a really diverse group of people. So, why don't you actually talk a little bit more about that? Like, who are the learners that you're supporting, and what pressures or challenges are most present for them right now?
Yes, our learners are primarily the GS1 member organization staff across all levels, and also my colleagues at Global Office. These are very capable professionals that work in a very complex environments, but also under pressure because they engage with the industry at the end. Just a concrete example to explain this model. A training manager in one of our member organizations might need to understand a new GS1 standard. So think about, for instance, migrating from the barcode, the traditional one, to the 2D, which carries richer information. But in the same week, they need to understand that they need to be able to explain this change to the industry, retailers, marketplaces, healthcare, so whatever industry is they engage with, and support these companies in adopting it, but also perhaps onboarding new colleagues at the same time. And so the challenge is not the learning itself. It's really translated these complex topics into something that creates value for the industry. So something that is practical, usable, easy to explain to the industry, because you imagine, retailers, marketplaces, the different industries, they don't need complexity. A standard and services may be complex, but they need solutions, they need support, they need clarity. So, our question in general for us in global training is what can we simplify or clarify so people can focus on the value for industry? And what makes them confident to learn, train others, and to support customers.
Absolutely, and what a challenge. I mean, I think especially when you're close to something, right? It becomes very difficult to explain that in a simplified way or to a different industry, right? Where it's like, "Hey, this is how I'm thinking about it because I'm used to working with these industries," but
Yeah.
then how do you switch it up? So, I would imagine just that trying to teach that to a broad group who's trying to then teach it to an even broader group is quite the challenge. If you picture kind of the ideal state of learning or talent development at your
Mm.
organization, what does that actually look like in practice? Like how do you handle some of these complexities that you just talked about?
So just ideally, okay, if we think about the ideal state uh, for our learners, this is, but also the industry we work with, is something to use and adopt. So learning is something that they can use and they can adopt. For instance, I don't know if we think about a GS1 stuff. Instead of if we need more training on sustainability, instead of saying this is a course, take it online or whatever, take it, and then you add your takeaways. We provide ready to use materials that these people can review right before a meeting with the industry partner stakeholder, including, talking points, FAQs, materials to engage, like videos or other things, common questions that they are likely to face, and assets they can use during the meeting to build this engagement, this trust, and to train industry. So in this sense, ideally, learning is also embedded in the flow of work, and it helps people act. This is ideally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think everyone is really, talking about that, but then when it comes to, implementing it, it's like, how do you implement that in a way that feels authentic and real and that people will actually use in the flow of work? So why don't you speak to that a little bit? Like, where do you see kind of the biggest gap between the ideal state and where you're at currently?
Yeah, so this is the idea. It's our ambition, is what we try to do every day. But in reality, what happens is that we need to develop materials that should resonate with the 120 member organizations at GS1, each having a different level of maturity, a different culture, a different size, languages, local context, local industries, ways of working. So the big challenge is to translate something that resonate for everybody. So the challenge for us is that if our stakeholders don't see immediately how to use the training materials in their own context, they don't adopt it. And sometimes they may create something ad hoc that can be also created by another member organization. So it's kind of duplicating the work because the standard, the services, the topics are the same for GS1 in general. And this is really where the gap, the challenge often sit. Is not the quality of the content, but the ability to translate across very different contexts, regions, locations, and support actions.
Yeah, absolutely. We hear that a lot with a lot of global companies just because it is so hard. Like there are so many things that are just very culture or area or region specific and things are just consumed in a different way, and that does become the challenge. I think it's something that's also kind of beautiful about this work though, because it forces you to kind of understand, right? You're constantly evaluating and seeing if you're understanding, those people that you're actually working with. Speaking of, how are you kind of designing those learning experiences to ensure that learning actually sticks beyond just like attendance or completion rates, like with these different groups?
Yeah, so we always start with the needs, industry needs, and member organization needs. So this is the starting point. And to go there, we organize surveys, meetings, workshops, informal feedback, one-to-one. So collecting the needs requires time and efforts. But as you said, it's also an opportunity to understand our organization better, to meet people, to connect with the different stakeholders. Um, just an example of, okay, so a couple of years ago, we needed to roll out a training on a new GS1 topic. That several member organizations needed to explain to industry at the same time. This context was technically complex. So I would say it was complex for me. We had subject matter experts in the working team and the work group and everything. Uh, but instead of designing the training program by ourselves at global level, even if we had the experts, we put together a group of training experts with representatives from several member organizations and also subject matter experts from different regions. And we worked through real industry questions. We tested the process, challenged each other, what was clear, what was not. And we also involved some of these industry representatives in the review of the materials, which contributed to really shape the material in the way the industry needs and needed. So it took time. These processes take time because when you put a lot of people together with several review cycles, everybody want to have a voice, everybody should be heard. It's really a lot of consensus that we need to drive and get. But at the end, the materials were usable, adaptable, trusted. We could publish on the GS1 website as a resource also for other stakeholders. And this is really what here I just want it makes a difference. Also, respect to other corporate organizations I work in the past is that we do a lot with the training network, with the community. We co-create, we review, we refine learning together. We don't design and release in isolation because we are a global office working on all of that. So I would say this takes time up front, but at the end is very effective. So this allows us to help everybody put their reality into the training programs, into the training assets. They feel also the ownership, they have a voice, they contribute, collaboration, co-creation, and at the end, this brings adoption and use.
Sarah, there's been a shift from soft skills to what many are calling durable or even power skills, I've heard people call it, but things like judgment, discernment, decision making, and adaptability. How is, your team thinking about skills development in this moment, especially as AI accelerates change?
Yes, I had a lot of discussions, as you mentioned, about this shift, soft skills to these power skills. I like the term. Well, I think the shift in our team and also what I see in other companies is what I like is this shift from soft skills to judgment and decision making, basically. Because if we think about now with the AI, okay, the information is easy to access and consume for many of us, and what makes the difference is not to access the information, perhaps, is not to analyze the information, but really the ability to decide what is important, what is not, when to slow down, when to react, when to anticipate. And this is what it counts in complex environment, also in my experience. So reading the situation, understanding the context, and making decision, even if when we don't have all the answers. I think this is judgment. We can call it informed judgment and also decision making. And this is where what I focus on in learning, especially with my team. So helping people think clearly, prioritize, and also take responsibilities for their decisions.
Absolutely. I love that informed judgment. I think that's absolutely something that we're seeing as a skill that with AI, everyone really needs. But how are you balancing kind of building human capabilities alongside technical or even role based skills?
So I don't think that human and technical skills can be separated. So a technical expert who cannot adapt their messages to their audience doesn't really enable learning. On the other side, if you are teaching something, training someone on a group on something that is complex, you need technical skills. And in our environment, we have seen cases where someone had deep expertise but struggled in conversation with not technical colleagues. I think this is something we always see, or industry stakeholders. And the knowledge is there, but the connection was not. And so we approached this through targeted coaching, peer feedback, focusing on skills like reading the audience, listening first, adjusting the message to what people need. I think this is key. So people needs first. In this way, the impact increased, and it became very powerful because you have the technical skills plus the human capabilities to pass the message based on what people need. And this is really where the real value sits. But if you think about this happens also to many of us in many situations every day. Just imagine we want to learn how to use a video making app. And what do? We ask, for instance, a friend, okay? So can you help me? And some of them start with the technical explanation, the tools, the features, the options, without asking, what do you need? What do you want to know? Why you want to know? You want to use this app? Or you want to make a video, a short video for your social media? I don't know. In 5 minutes, you are lost and you lose your interest, but not because it's too complex, but because it's not adapted to your need. And but the knowledge is important at the same time. So knowledge without translation doesn't enable learning. Both of them should be are important.
I love that. That's such a good way to summarize kind of where we're at right now, I think, with technology, and it's so, so important to have that knowledge there. Shifting gears a little bit to talking about measuring what matters. How are you measuring the application of learning today? Are there certain metrics or qualitative signals that carry the most weight with your stakeholders?
So in our federated organization, like this one, we cannot mandate learning or training at all. But the most important signal is adoption. If people choose to use the training, reuse the materials to engage with the industry, leverage our learning platform, this tell us that learning is relevant to their daily work and has an impact on the GS1 success. So concretely, we track adoption of our global training platform. We track the reuse of global training materials across member organizations, but also we look at satisfaction and feedback alongside adoption. So we track satisfaction with the global training system, whatever the training helped them engage more effectively with the industry, but also improve their knowledge skills at just one staff and feel more confident in the role. And these two metrics are so important to measure the application of learning for us. If adoption goes up, satisfaction goes up at the same time, is a very, very positive and strong signal that learning is creating real capability. If this doesn't happen, we need to go back, ask questions, and change what we are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you really have a good grasp on that, and I know that can be really hard to measure, and understand in practice in the day to day. Looking at AI, is AI, we've talked about it obviously a little bit throughout this interview, but is AI a part of your learning strategy today? And if so, where are you seeing like the most value?
So it's a very important part of our training strategy. We published a new global training strategy in May 2024. This was included already at that time because it helps us to do three things better: scale, speed up content creation, but also understand partners that we would otherwise miss. So, a concrete example from one of our recent projects, we used AI supported tools to accelerate the creation of global learning assets. And also, we used Copilot to analyze large volumes of learner feedback across regions. And this allows to identify recurrent needs, adjust content much faster without losing consistency. But again, what it's very important to me is that AI is a tool, is a powerful technology, but it doesn't replace judgment, as we said. It doesn't replace reflection, decision making. It doesn't replace human connection. So we, in our strategy, we don't use AI to decide, but we use it to inform.
No, I love that. I love that simplicity, but it speaks volumes to how you kinda need to be thinking about it, right? Where it's like we don't use it for decision making. We use it to inform. And I think that's like a good principle that, people can have at the forefront of their minds as they're going through that. Um, Speaking of, what are some of the, like you just said, we use it to, uh, you know, not make decisions, but just to inform. What other kind of guardrails or design principles, like with your AI structure, are you using to ensure that it enhances, human learning and connection rather than diluting it?
So I think this is also common from what I heard from others, colleagues in the same environment and industry. So I think strong governance and collaboration, as an example, when we explored connecting AI tools to analytics, we involved the IT department and legal from day one, because I think governance is very important. This slow it down at the beginning, because you need to have these conversations and the joint analysis and way forward, but it builds trust and also allows to scale responsibly later. The second one, I think, is transparency. So people need to understand how AI is being used, and also, again, we go back to this human judgment when it remains very important. So they need to feel psychologically safe to use AI in the organization. Again, to inform of decisions, but judgment remains on them. And the third one, I think, is focus, because so what happens with the AI, we can create content faster, but the content we produce is helping people grow, or is just producing more content for the sake of producing content. So we need to remain focused on our strategy, on our learners, on our stakeholders, on their needs. So if AI doesn't support learning, I mean, it doesn't belong in our strategy. Again, I am a firm believer we don't produce content just for the sake of producing content.
I love that. And I think that's something, when AI first came out, everyone just started like overproducing content and was like, whoa, I think it became so like oversaturated and overwhelming for everyone. And it's like, let's do this a little bit more intentionally, please. So I think we are starting to see a general shift in that. I mean, you still see it kind of like flooding social, just go on LinkedIn and you can scroll and say, okay, 90% of these posts were made with like AI reading. But I think people are getting a little bit better about how they're using it and putting some more thought into it and being a little bit more intentional, because it instantly became kinda like, ooh, glazed over, with all of that. Switching gears from AI, as you look to the next few years, what do you believe L&D leaders need to kind of unlearn, and what do they need to double down on?
So unlearning is always complex. Also for me, I am a training professional, but it's complex. I have reflected a little bit on this with other colleagues in the past months. I think so that L&D leaders need to learn that our value doesn't is not so linked from to producing and delivering training, because again, back to your point, content is everywhere, and AI can generate explanation courses, videos, materials, training assets easily. And our value in the future is helping organization decide what skills are key to develop and improve for the organization and for the people in the organization, where people should focus their energy, where they need to improve, what they need to learn, and how learning supports their daily work, instead of producing and delivering content and training itself, which will remain a part, but not the main focus. And so I think, continuing building culture, training culture where there is trust, sharing understanding, connection between people, growth. This is, I think, where L&D leaders can have a big impact in the future, not far future, but I mean, medium term.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think there's something really beautiful to that with what you're saying. It's almost like as we have more technology that kind of enables us to do things a little bit more efficiently, it also is giving us this more time back in our days to really focus on human connection. And there's huge value in that. I think that's going to open up doors for people to have all of this time to connect with one another that in deeper ways, more meaningful ways, obviously still tied to business objectives, but that I think we have never had maybe before in modern time because we've always been so bogged down with, like, actual just work all the time and producing and things like that. So I think what you're saying there is really something powerful and hopeful to look at, right, for the future as it comes. Sarah, to close on a kind of happy note or a positive note, what's one lesson you've learned as an L&D leader that you wish you'd known earlier in your career?
So I would say adaptability. So earlier in my career, I thought being effective meant having things figured out all the times. But I think with the experience, I have learned that adaptability matters much more, the ability to read the situation and keep learning and adjusting as things change. So this is really keep learning, keep adjusting as things change. And again, keep learning is something we love. But there is also another thing. One of our CEOs in the Just One Federation often says to me, Sarah, keep smiling. And I think that matters more than we sometimes admit. So I would say enjoy what you learn, but also enjoy what you do.
Yes. No, absolutely. I think that's so important and a beautiful note to end on. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today on the NovoEDTalks podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of NovoEDTalks.